Chapter 1, Part 1 of Gigolo by Edna Ferber. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kirsten Wever. Gigolo by Edna Ferber. The Afternoon of a Faun, Part 1. Though he rarely heeded its summons, cagey boy that he was, the telephone rang oftenest for Nick. Because of the many native noises of the place, the telephone had a special bell that was a combination buzz and ring. It sounded above the roar of outgoing cars, the splash of the hose, the sputter and hum of the electric battery in the rear. Nick heard it unheeding. A voice, Smitty's or Mike's or Elmer's, answering its call. Then, echoing through the gray vaulted spaces of the big garage, "Nick! Oh, Nick!" From the other side of the great cement-floored enclosure, or in muffled tones from beneath the car, "Whatcha want?" "Dame on the wire." "I ain't in." The obliging voice again dutifully repeating the message. "He ain't in. Well, it's hard to say. He might be in a couple of hours, and then again he might not be back till late. I guess he's went to Hammond on a job." Warming to his task now, "Say, won't I do?" "Who's fresh? Aw, say, lady." You'd think, after repeated rebuffs of this sort, she could not possibly be so lacking in decent pride as to leave her name for Smitty or Mike or Elmer to bandy about. But she invariably did, baffled by Nick's elusiveness. She was likely to be any one of a number. Miss Bowers phoned. "Will you tell him, please?" A nasal voice, and haughty, with the hauteur that seeks to conceal secret fright. "Tell him it's important." Miss Ahern phoned. "Will you tell him, please? Just say Miss Ahern. Ahearn. Miss Olson. Just Gertie. But oftenest Miss Bowers. Cupid's messenger, wearing grease-grimed overalls and the fatuous grin of the dalliant male, would transmit his communication to the uneager Nick. "'Swonder you wouldn't answer the phone once yourself. Says you was to call Miss Bowers any time you come in between 1 and 6 at Hyde Park. Wait a minute. Yeah, Hyde Park, 6079. And any time after 6 at all." "What'd she want?" "Well, how the hell should I know? Says call Miss Bowers any time between 1 and 6 at Hyde Park, 6. Swell chance. Which explains why the calls came oftenest for Nick. He was so indifferent to them. You pictured the patient and persistent Miss Bowers, or the ox-like Miss Olson, or Miss Ahern, or just Gertie, hovering within hearing distance of the telephone, listening, while 1 o'clock deepened to 6, for the call that never came, plucking up fresh courage at 6, until 6 o'clock dragged on to bedtime. When next they met, "I bet you was there all the time. Pity you wouldn't answer a call when a person leaves their name. You could have given me a ring. I bet you was there all the time." "Well, maybe I was." Bewildered, she tried to retaliate with the boomerang of vituperation. How could she know? How could she know that this slim, slick, young garage mechanic was a woodland creature in disguise, a satyr in store clothes, a wild thing who perversely preferred to do his own pursuing. How could Miss Bowers know, she who cashiered in the Green Front Grocery and Market on 53rd Street, or Miss Olson at the Rialto ticket window, or the Celtic emotional Miss Ahern the manicure, or Gertie the goof? They knew nothing of mythology, of pointed ears and pug noses and goat's feet. Nick's ears, to their fond gaze, presented an honest red surface protruding from either side of his head. His feet, in tan-laced shoes, were ordinary feet, a little more than ordinarily expert, perhaps, in the convolutions of the dance at Englewood Masonic Hall, which is part of Chicago's vast South Side. No, a faun to Miss Bowers, Miss Olson, Miss Ahern, and just Gertie, was one of those things in the Lincoln Park Zoo. Perhaps sometimes they realized, vaguely, that Nick was different. When, for example, they tried, and failed, to picture him looking interestedly at one of those three-piece bedroom sets, glistening like pulled taffy in the window of the installment furniture store, while they, shy yet proprietary, clung to his arm and eyed the price ticket, now $98.50. You couldn't see Nick interested in bedroom sets, in price tickets, in any of those settled, fixed, everyday things. He was fluid, evasive, like quicksilver, though they did not know to put it thus. Miss Bowers, goaded to revolt, would say pettishly, "You're like a mosquito, that's what. Person never knows from one minute to the other where you're at." "Yeah," Nick would retort. "When you know where a mosquito's at, what do you do to him? I ain't looking to be squashed." Miss Ahern, whose public position, the hygienic barber shop, gents' manicure 50 cents, offered unlimited social opportunities, would assume a gay indifference. "They's plenty boys begging to take me out every hour in the day. Swell lads, too. I ain't waiting round for any greasy mechanic like you. Don't think it. Say, look at your nails. They'd queer you with me, let alone what else all's wrong with you." In answer, Nick would put one hand, one broad, brown, steel-strong hand, with its broken, discolored nails, on Miss Ahern's arm, in its flimsy georgette sleeve. Miss Ahern's eyelids would flutter and close, and a little shiver would run with icy hot feet all over Miss Ahern. Nick was like that. Nick's real name wasn't Nick at all, or scarcely at all. His last name was Nicholas, and his parents, long before they became his parents, traced their origin to some obscure Czechoslovakian province, long before we all became so glib with our Czechoslovakia. His first name was Dewey, knowing which, you automatically know the date of his birth. It was a patriotic but unfortunate choice on the part of his parents. The name did not fit him, too mealy, not debonair enough. Nick, Nicky in tenderer moments, Miss Bowers, Miss Olson, Miss Ahern, just Gertie et al. His method with women was firm and somewhat stern, but never brutal. He never waited for them if they were late. Any girl who assumed that her value was enhanced in direct proportion to her tardiness in keeping an engagement with Nick found herself standing disconsolate on the corner of 53rd and Lake, trying to look as if she were merely waiting for the Lake Park car, and not peering wistfully up and down the street in search of a slim, graceful, hurrying figure that never came. It is difficult to convey in words the charm that Nick possessed. Seeing him, you beheld merely a medium-sized young mechanic in reasonably grimed garage clothes when working, and in tight pants, tight coat, silk shirt, long-visored green cap when at leisure. A rather pallid skin due to the nature of his work. Large, deft hands, a good deal like the hands of a surgeon, square, blunt-fingered, spatulate. Indeed, as you saw him at work, a wire-netted electric bulb held in one hand, the other plunged deep into the vitals of the car on which he was engaged, you thought of a surgeon performing a major operation. He wore one of those round skull caps characteristic of his craft, the brimless crown of an old felt hat. He would deftly remove the transmission case and plunge his hand deep into the car's guts, feeling expertly about with his engine-wise fingers, as a surgeon feels for liver, stomach, gallbladder, intestines, appendix. When he brought up his hand, all dripping with grease, which is the warm blood of the car, he had invariably put his finger on the sore spot. All this, of course, could not serve to endear him to the girls. On the contrary, you would have thought that his hands alone, from which he could never quite free the grease and grit, would have caused some feeling of repugnance among the lily-fingered. But they, somehow, seemed always to be finding an excuse to touch him, his tie, his hair, his coat-sleeve. They seemed even to derive a vicarious thrill from holding his hat or cap when on an outing. They brushed imaginary bits of lint from his coat lapel. They tried on his seal ring, crying, "Ooh, look at how big it is for me, even my thumb." He called this pawing a guy over, and the lint ladies he designated as thread pickers. No, it can't be classified, this powerful draw he had for them. His conversation furnished no clue. It was commonplace conversation, limited, even dull. When astonished or impressed or horrified or amused, he said, "Can ye feature that?" When emphatic or confirmatory, he said, "You tell 'em." It wasn't his car and the opportunities it furnished for drives, both country and city. That motley piece of mechanism represented such an assemblage of unrelated parts as could only have been made to coordinate under Nick's expert guidance. It was out of commission more than half the time, and could never be relied upon to furnish a holiday. Both Miss Bowers and Miss Ahern had 12-cylinder opportunities that should have rendered them forever unfit for travel in Nick's one-lung vehicle of locomotion. It wasn't money. Though he was generous enough with what he had, Nick couldn't be generous with what he hadn't, and his wage at the garage was $40 a week. Miss Ahern's silk stockings cost $4.50. His unconcern should have infuriated them, but it served to pique. He wasn't actually as unconcerned as he appeared, but he had early learned that effort in their direction was unnecessary. Nick had little imagination, a gorgeous selfishness, a tolerantly contemptuous liking for the sex. Naturally, however, his attitude toward them had been somewhat embittered by being obliged to watch their method of driving a car in and out of the ideal garage doorway. His own manipulation of the wheel was nothing short of wizardry. He played the harmonica. Each Thursday afternoon was Nick's half-day off. From 12 until 7:30 he was free to range the bosky highways of Chicago. When his car, he called it the bus, was agreeable, he went a wheel in search of amusement. The bus being indisposed, he went afoot. He rarely made plans in advance, usually was accompanied by some successful telephonee. He rather liked to have a silken shirt beside him, fluttering and flirting in the breeze as he broke the speed regulations. On this Thursday afternoon in July he had timed his morning job to a miraculous nicety, so that, at the stroke of 12, his workaday garments dropped from him magically, as though he were a male, and reversed Cinderella. There was a washroom and a rough sort of sleeping-room containing 2 cots, situated in the second story of the ideal garage. Here Nick shed the loose garments of labor for the fashionably tight habiliments of leisure. Private chauffeurs, whose employers housed their cars in the ideal garage, used this nook for a lounge and smoker. Smitty, Mike, Elmer, and Nick snatched stolen siestas there in the rare absences of the manager. Sometimes Nick spent the night there when forced to work overtime. His home life, at best, was a sketchy affair. Here chauffeurs, mechanics, washers lolled at ease, exchanging soft-spoken gossip, motor chat, speculation, comment, and occasional verbal obscenity. Each possessed a formidable knowledge of that neighborhood section of Chicago known as Hyde Park. This knowledge was not confined to car costs and such impersonal items, but included meals, scandals, relationships, finances, love affairs, quarrels, peccadillos. Here Nick often played his harmonica, his lips sweeping the metal length of it in throbbing rendition of such sure-fire sentimentality as "The Long, Long Trail" or "Mammy," while the others talked, joked, kept time with tapping feet or wagging heads. To-day the hot little room was empty, except for Nick, shaving before the cracked mirror on the wall, and old Elmer reading a scrap of yesterday's newspaper as he lounged his noon hour away. Old Elmer was 37, and Nicky regarded him as an octogenarian. Also, old Elmer's conversation bored Nick to the point of almost sullen resentment. Old Elmer was a family man. His talk was all of his family, the wife, the kids, the flat. A garrulous person, lank, pasty, dish-faced, and amiable. His half-day off was invariably spent tinkering about the stuffy little flat, painting, nailing up shelves, mending a broken window-shade, puttying a window, playing with his pasty little boy, aged 16 months, and his pasty little girl, aged 3 years. Next day he regaled his fellow workers with elaborate recitals of his holiday hours. "Believe me, that kid's a caution. 16 months old, and what does he do yesterday? He unfastens the catch on the back porch gate. We got a gate on the back porch, see?" This frequent "see," which interlarded Elmer's verbiage, was not used in any interrogatory way, but as a period, or by way of emphasis. His voice did not take the rising inflection as he uttered it. "What does he do? He opens it. I come home and the wife says to me, "Say, you better get busy and fix a new catch on that gate to the back porch. Little Elmer, first thing I knew, he'd got it open today and was crawling out almost." Say, can you beat that for a kid 16 months? Nick had finished shaving. He had donned his clean white soft shirt. His soft collar fitted to a miracle about his strong throat. Nick's sartorial effects were a triumph on 40 a week. Say, can't you talk about nothing but that kid of yours? I bet he's a bum specimen at that. Runt, like his pa. Elmer flung down his newspaper in honest indignation, as Nick had wickedly meant he should. "Is that so? Why, he was wrastling round with me and him, see, last night on the floor, and what does he do? He raises his mitt and hands me a wallop in the stomach. It knocked the wind out of me, that's all. 16 months. Yeah, I suppose this time next year he'll be boxing for money." Elmer resumed his paper. "What do you know?" His tone mingled pity with contempt. Nick took a last critical survey of the cracked mirror's reflection and found it good. "Nothing, only this. You make me sick with your kids and your missus and your place. Say, don't you never have no fun?" "Fun? Why, say, last Saturday we was out to the beach, and the kids swum out first thing you know—" "Oh, shut up." He was dressed now. He slapped his pockets. Harmonica, cigarettes, matches, money. He was off. His long-visored cloth cap pulled jauntily over his eyes. Elmer, bearing no rancor, flung a last idle query. "Where are you going?" "How should I know? Just bumming around. Bus is out of commission, and I'm out of luck." He clattered down the stairs, whistling. End of Chapter 1, Part 1.